Welcome to our spine-chilling video channel, where you'll encounter tales so terrifying, they'll make your skin crawl. Prepare yourself for a journey into the darkest corners of the supernatural and the unexplained. These are stories that will leave you questioning reality itself, and whether you can believe it or not, each one of them is rooted in chilling, real-life experiences. So, gather your courage, turn off the lights, and get ready for a descent into the unknown, where the line between reality and nightmare blurs. Welcome to a world where the unimaginable becomes hauntingly real. Episode 2. Today's our story is Lost in the Fog. Hey everyone, my name's Alex. I want to tell you about something weird that happened to me. It's a story about a place I wish I had never gone to, a place I heard about from my friend Mike. You see, I've always been into exploring old, forgotten places. But this time, it was different. This time, it was a small, hidden village covered in fog. Mike told me about it one day. He said it was a place that didn't make sense, a place that shouldn't exist, but duh. That's what got me interested. So, grab a seat and get comfortable. I'm about to take you on a journey to a village that haunts my dreams, a place where time and memories get lost in the fog. It started as a casual chat with Mike. We were talking about our adventures, and he mentioned this village. He said he'd never been there, but he'd heard stories. Stories of a place abandoned, wrapped in fog, where people who went in didn't come out the same. Mike joked, maybe it's haunted, or maybe it's just a tale. I laughed, but I couldn't shake the thought of it from my mind. I had to see it for myself. The next weekend, I packed my backpack and camera and set off to find this mysterious village. The journey wasn't easy. The village was hidden well, surrounded by dense woods and endless fog. It felt like stepping into a different world. As I walked through the woods, the trees seemed to whisper secrets. The fog got thicker, making it hard to see. Then suddenly, there it was. The village. It looked like something from an old book, with houses covered in plants and streets empty and silent. The air was cool and damp. The silence was heavy, like it was pressing down on me. I started walking down the main street, my footsteps echoing off the old buildings. Everything was still, like the village was frozen in time. I felt excited, but also a bit scared. The place was creepy, more than any other place I'd been to. I took out my camera and started taking pictures, trying to capture the feel of the village. But then, I felt it. A feeling that I wasn't alone. I turned around quickly, but there was no one there. Just the fog and the empty houses. That's when I saw him. An old man standing in the middle of the road, watching me. My heart jumped. He was the first person I'd seen here, and he didn't look happy to see me. That was the beginning of my journey into a mystery I was not ready for, into a place where time and memories seemed to get lost, just like the village itself. After seeing the old man, I froze. My mind was racing. Who was he? Why was he here in this forgotten place? I had to know. Slowly, I started walking towards him. My heart was pounding in my chest. As I got closer, the man just stood there, watching me. He looked like he was part of the village old, a bit worn down, but with a story to tell. His eyes were sharp, like he'd seen a lot. "Hello," I called out, trying to sound friendly. He didn't say anything at first. He just looked at me, studying me. Then, in a voice as old as the creaking buildings around us, he said, "You shouldn't be here." His words sent a chill down my spine. But I needed answers. "I'm just exploring," I explained. "I'm Alex. What's your name?" The old man sighed, like he was carrying a heavy weight. "I'm Joseph," he said. "In this place, it's not for exploring. It's got a past, a dark one." Joseph started to walk, and I followed. He moved slowly, each step deliberate. We walked past the silent houses and overgrown gardens. It felt like walking through someone's forgotten memories. As we walked, Joseph began to talk. His voice was low, filled with a sadness that made my heart feel heavy. He talked about the village, about how it used to be full of life and laughter. But then, something happened. A tragedy that he didn't explain. People left, Joseph said, or maybe they disappeared. The details, they get foggy. I listened, my mind racing with questions. What happened here? What made everyone leave or disappear? I looked at Joseph, hoping he would tell me more. But his face was like a closed book, hiding its story. We stopped in the center of the village. The fog seemed to dance around us, hiding and revealing the crumbling buildings. Joseph looked around, his eyes distant, like he was seeing ghosts of the past. This place, he said, it changes you. You lose track of time, of memories. It's like living in a dream that you can't wake up from. I felt a shiver run through me. His words, they made me think of the stories Mike had told me. Of lost time, of a place that shouldn't exist. I realized then that this village was more than just abandoned. It was a place where reality seemed to twist and turn, hiding secrets in the fog. Joseph turned to me, his eyes serious. "Be careful, Alex," he warned. "Some things, once you know them, you can't forget." As the day turned into evening, the village felt even stranger. The shadows grew longer, and the fog seemed thicker. I knew I should leave, but something kept me there, a feeling I couldn't shake off. After talking to Joseph, I had more questions than answers. What was the tragedy he spoke of? And why did he warn me about the place? I decided to stay a bit longer to explore under the cover of night. Maybe the darkness would reveal more of the village's secrets. As I walked through the dark streets, my flashlight was the only thing piercing the fog. The houses looked different at night, more eerie, like they were watching me. Every sound made me jump, a branch breaking, the wind whispering. I found a small house on the edge of the village and decided to stay there for the night. The door was off its hinges, and the inside was covered in dust and cobwebs. It was creepy, but it was shelter. I set up my small camp inside the house, my heart still racing from the day's events. The silence of the village was overwhelming. It felt like the air was thick with stories left untold. As I sat there in the dark, my mind kept going back to Joseph's words. "It changes you," he had said. I wondered what he meant. How could a place change you? Then I heard it. A sound that didn't belong. A faint whisper, like someone speaking just out of sight. I held my breath, listening. But it was gone as quickly as it came, leaving me to wonder if I'd heard anything at all. I tried to sleep, but it was hard. Every little noise made me think of Joseph's warning. What if the village was haunted? What if the stories were true? In the middle of the night, I woke up suddenly. The air felt colder, and the silence was deeper. I looked around, my heart pounding. That's when I sighted a figure standing in the doorway, watching me. I grabbed my flashlight and shone it towards the door. But there was nothing there, just the empty doorway and the fog rolling in. I tried to convince myself it was just my imagination, but deep down, I wasn't sure. The next morning, the village looked different in the light. It was less scary, but still strange. The fog was lighter, and I could see more of the old buildings and streets. I had a feeling that the village was hiding things, secrets waiting to be discovered. I packed up my stuff and decided to explore. There was an old school on the edge of the village that caught my eye. It looked like it hadn't been used for a long time. The windows were broken, and the door hung open. Inside the school, everything was covered in dust. There were desks and chairs, all scattered around. It felt like the kids had just left, like they might come back any moment. But I knew that wouldn't happen. The place was too quiet, too forgotten. I walked through the halls, looking at the old pictures on the walls. They showed happy times, children playing, people smiling. It was hard to believe this was the same village. Then, I found something weird. In one of the classrooms, there was a blackboard with writing still on it. The words were faded, but I could make them out. "Don't forget us," it said. It was like a message left behind, the plea. I felt a chill run down my spine. Who wrote it? And what did they want not to be forgotten? I took a photo of the blackboard, thinking maybe I could figure it out later. After leaving the school, I walked to the village center. The streets were still empty, the houses still silent. But now, I looked at them differently. They weren't just old buildings. They were reminders of the lives that used to be here. I saw the old town hall next. The door was locked, but I found a way in through a broken window. Inside, it was dark and smelled like old wood and dust. There were papers scattered everywhere and old furniture piled up. I started looking through the papers, hoping to find something about the village's past. Most of it was old records and letters. But then, I found a newspaper clipping. It was yellowed with age, but I could read the headline. "Mystery in the fog, the entire village disappears." My heart skipped a beat. Disappears? What did that mean? I read the article, but it didn't give many details. Just rumors and guesses. But one thing was clear, something bad had happened here, something that made everyone leave or vanish. After finding the newspaper clipping, my head was full of questions. I had to find out more. I went back to Joseph, hoping he could explain. The village was quiet as I walked, the silence heavy with secrets. I found Joseph sitting outside his house, staring into the fog. He looked up when he saw me. "You're still here," he said, sounding a bit surprised. "I found something," I told him, holding up the newspaper clipping. "Can you tell me what happened?" Joseph took the clipping and looked at it. His face changed, like he was remembering something painful. "I was hoping you wouldn't find that," he said quietly. He started to talk, and I listened. The village, he said, had been normal once. But then, things started to change. People began to disappear. At first, it was just one or two, but then more and more. Panic spread through the village. People thought it was a curse, Joseph said. They were afraid. Afraid of the fog, afraid of each other. No one knew who would be next. The authorities tried to investigate, but they found nothing. No clues, no explanations. Just empty houses and unanswered questions. Eventually, the remaining people left, too scared to stay. But some of us couldn't leave, Joseph continued. It was like the village held us here, trapped in the fog. I asked him about the blackboard message, "Don't forget us." Joseph sighed. "That was the children," he said. "They wanted to be remembered, to not be lost in the fog like the others." I felt a lump in my throat. This wasn't just a ghost story. It was real people had lived here, and they had vanished. And now, Joseph was one of the few left, living with the memories. "Why are you still here?" I asked. Joseph looked at me, his eyes deep and sad. "Because I can't leave. The village, it's a part of me now. And I can't forget what happened." The sun was setting, and the fog was rolling in again. I looked at Joseph, at the village around us. I felt a chill, not from the cold, but from the realization of the truth. The village was more than abandoned. It was a place of lost souls, of stories that ended too soon. After hearing Joseph's story, I knew I had to leave. The village wasn't just a place of mystery. It was a place of sorrow and danger. I packed my things quickly, the sun sinking lower and the fog growing thicker. As I hurried through the village, the fog seemed to close in around me. It was like it was alive, trying to keep me there. I felt a growing sense of panic. The stories of people vanishing, the children's play on the blackboard, it all felt too real now. I reached the edge of the village, but the path I'd come in on was gone, swallowed by the fog. I tried to find another way, but every direction seemed the same. It was like the village was a maze, keeping me trapped. I remembered what Joseph had said, some people couldn't leave. Was I going to be one of them? Lost in the fog forever? My heart raced, and I kept moving, desperate to find a way out. Then, I heard it. A voice calling my name. It was faint, but it was there. "Alex," it said over and over. I followed the sound, hoping it was my way out. The voice led me to a part of the village I hadn't seen before. The buildings were even more run down, the fog even thicker. And then, in the middle of it all, I saw a figure. It was a woman, standing in the fog. She looked real, but also not real, like a ghost. She pointed, and I saw a path, a way out of the village. I didn't stop to ask questions. I followed the path, and slowly, the fog began to clear. I looked back once, but the woman was gone, and the village was disappearing into the mist. I made it out, back to the world I knew. But I couldn't forget the village, the people who had vanished, and Joseph's sad eyes. The experience stayed with me, haunting my dreams. I never went back to that village. Some places are better left alone, their secrets hidden in the fog. But I always wondered, was it real? Or just a trick of the mind, a story created by the mist? I was back in my own world, but the village never really left me. It stayed in my mind like a dream you can't shake off. I tried to tell people about it, about the fog, the disappearances, and Joseph, but it was hard for them to believe. I went back to my normal life, but things felt different. Every time I saw fog rolling in, my heart would beat faster, and I'd remember the village. I kept thinking about the people who had vanished, wondering where they went, what happened to them. I did some research, trying to find out more. But there wasn't much. The village was like a ghost, barely there in history. It was as if it had been forgotten, erased by time and the fog. Then, one night, I had a dream. I was back in the village, walking through the fog. I heard the children's voices, the ones who had written on the blackboard. They were laughing, playing, like they were happy. In the dream, I saw the woman again, the one who had shown me the way out. She didn't speak, but she smiled at me, a sad, knowing smile. I woke up feeling different, like something had changed. I realized the village, with all its mystery and sadness, had given me something. It made me see how important memories are, how they keep the past alive. I decided to write down everything I remembered, every detail. I wanted to remember the village, to honor those who had been lost. Even if the world had forgotten them, I hadn't. And in some way, I felt like that was what the village had wanted, for someone to remember to tell its story. So that's what I did. I shared the story, not as a ghost tale, but as a memory of a place that once was. A place of mystery, yes, but also of lives and dreams. And though I never went back, the village stayed with me, a reminder of the thin line between reality and the mysteries that lie just beyond. The village, for me, was a journey not just through the fog and forgotten streets, but through the shadows of time and memory. And that journey, that story, is what I carry with me always. Thank you, dear listeners, for joining us on Red Penguin Stories. It's been an incredible journey, one that may seem unbelievable, yet every tale comes from a kernel of truth. If you're captivated and curious for more, please support us. Subscribe to our channel, give us a like, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your engagement keeps these extraordinary stories alive. Thank you for believing in the magic of storytelling. Stay tuned for more adventures.